Communities organized and ready for emergencies. CORE is a region-by-region program of the ODPM, and it's designed to reach you wherever you are once you're willing to be informed about preparedness. Hello, I'm Nayat Lee. You can get all the information and resources you need before and after an emergency or disaster. It's all available from the ODPM and the Disaster Management Unit of your regional corporation. Before and after an emergency, this is your #1 resource. But remember though, that during an emergency, you and your family are on your own, and it may take hours or days before help arrives.
But don't be scared. Be prepared for if and when that happens. I'm People Maurice. Come rain or shine, we're coming to your region to help you and your community get organized and ready for any emergency. Welcome to CORE. An ODPM Regional Coordinator, Eric Mackey, was here at work when he received the first call informing him of an oil spill in the Gulf of Paria. It would eventually affect the coastal areas of Point Fortin and Siparia.
Where were you? What were you doing when you first heard your community was in danger? What did you think would happen next? As suddenly as that, an unforeseen disaster can affect you where you live or work. Whether natural or man-made, a disaster changes your life, and when it does, you have to adapt.
Because disaster planning requires a prepared community. You can't be prepared for any emergency. Let's go to the Point Fortin Siparia area to find out how disaster planning goes into effect and how it includes you.
I was inside the front room watching TV in my house, and I started to smell this scent.
I was on vacation by my sister in Chigonas, and I saw my parents on TV.
Disgusting scent, and it was strong. I went outside and I saw oil in the beach.
When I came home, I saw the oil spill.
These municipalities belong to the oil belt. Residents here live and work in the vicinity of petrochemical activity, and they know that that comes with serious risks. Events including small oil spills are actually not uncommon.
If it come in a case that at some point in time I have to move, I will move, but right now I'm not moving right now. Here's my home. You understand? Because they're not the first time this happened, but this time it happened more worse than before.
Following the incident, the Ministry of Energy and Energy Affairs unrolled its National Oil Spill Contingency Plan. The ODPM also responded according to the guidelines of the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency.
The role of the ODPM is to coordinate a national effort between those who can restore order and those affected.
The ODPM monitors the status of every region, every single day, and reports to the National Security Council.
My name is Eric Mackey, and I'm a Regional Coordinator at the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Management. We have a meeting in here every morning at 9 a.m. and all of the regional coordinators are here. The Public Information Education section is here. Mitigation upstairs is also here as well. And basically we go through, at that point, we have gotten all of the calls, or most of the calls, from the various regions and the various agencies that we are interested in hearing from. At this point in time, there are 40 of them, and all of them are called every morning, or they send us an email indicating, well, what situations have occurred in the last 24 hours.
In any emergency, there will always be a delay before first responders can be coordinated to deal with the specifics of the situation. Even then, new information is always coming in.
Before help reaches you, you should have a plan for your household to survive for at least 3 days.
The National Emergency Operations Center has 3 levels, right? Level 1, level 2, and level 3. Level 1 is like what we're in right now. We're in a normal monitoring mode, right? We're not activated in here, but we have intelligence, as it were, as to everything that's happening in the country. Let's say, for example, we had a big fire in Point Lisa. The Cuba Tabaqui Talpara Regional Corporation would respond to that, right? They would go there and they would be feeding information back to us. If that fire was to escalate very large, if it was to take up 3, 4, 5 plants down there or something like that and got really out of hand, then we would go to a level 2, right? And because of the number of agencies involved and so on, and we would call up the agencies that are required to deal with that situation. However, if it was to expand even further and get really out of control, then we would go to level 3, right? And things like a storm or a hurricane, there's no level 2 there. It's a instant level 3 activation. Once we are under threat from a storm or a hurricane, or if a major earthquake happens, we go straight to level 3. We call up everybody and bring everybody inside of here. Once the order is given by the CEO to activate the NEOC, we then start the call-up process. So the call-up process involves physically calling all of the agencies represented here and getting the representatives. The representatives are known as ESFs, Emergency Support Functions. It takes about an hour to get everybody here and get operational. So when you get here, the first thing that happens is that the director will give everybody a brief of what's happening. By that time, we will have as much information as possible. We'll have up maps or use multimedia to give an idea of where is affected and so on. And our various departments will be injecting data into the situation on a continuous basis. The fuel leaked into the sea here. Now, the fuel oil is going to float on the water, right, because it is lighter than water. At that time, meteorologically, we had a very high wind flow at the surface. There was a lot of strong wind blowing. So it got a hold of the oil on the surface and it pushed it out into the Gulf. It got caught up in the current and it went this way and came straight back here. Everywhere from, well, we're now getting reports that up in this area here, like Otaheite and so on, has been impacted. But initially it was here, and then we started here and about here, Chatham and these places, and then down to Point Coco as well, right? So all of this area here in patches, there's not all one thing. This area here got away. Now, Vicini Beach is a very popular beach, as you know, and that was one success story that they had because they saw the oil come into Vicini Beach. And it was far enough offshore that they could deploy booms in the water, and they were able to deflect the oil away from this area. So all of this area here didn't get any oil at all. I got a call from Mark Rudder, a senior environmental engineer in the ministry. He is also the head of the plan. He developed the plan with our assistance. And I got a call from him to say that Petrotrin had just reported to him that oil had been spilled in the Gulf. I was here, it was probably around 8:30 in the morning. He was actually on his way to south to Petrotrin to sit in the emergency operations center that the oil spill response center that Petrotrin had set up. I was the only one here, and I called Kuva Tabakit Talpa Regional Corporation because they're just north of Point-A-Pierre and there was a possibility of impact in that area. So I called them, I called San Fernando City Corporation, Penal, DB, and Siparia, and advised them and Point Fortin as well, and advised them that there had been a spill in the Point-A-Pierre harbor and they should be looking out for the possibility of oil contaminating the coastline. The Ministry of Energy and Energy Affairs is the lead at that point, and we let them, we just left them to get the EOC activated and so on, which they did. And we started communicating back and forth. But the ODPM was strictly in a monitoring role. We didn't go any further on that. It was all handled between the ministry and Petrotrin. A request was made for a shelter to be opened, and that is the responsibility of the regional corporations, not the ODPM. The the Siparia Regional Corporation opened the Labre Community Center as a shelter.
If any disaster happens in Trinidad and Tobago, it is important to know that those buildings designated as shelters have to be made into functioning shelters by bringing supplies to them from warehouses. This takes time.
The ODPM will expedite the process, but again, you have to be prepared to be on your own until that time comes.
Generally, the regional corporation would look after the actual physical movement of the people. If it overwhelms them, then they contact us. You can't just walk into a shelter, right? There's a process that had to be followed in order to gain access to the shelter as a shelteree. Recognizing that, the ODPM developed a form on carbonless paper, right, that we put on the bus. So as the people get on board, you give them the form. So while they're in transit to the shelter, they can fill out the form. We always recommend that you have what's known as a emergency grab bag. You should have, if you have special needs in terms of medication and so on, you should always keep a little bag with an emergency supply of your medications near your door that you can literally grab as you're going out the door and go with it.
In your emergency grab bag, keep items that will make you relatively comfortable for 3 days. If you do not get a chance to bring your medication to a shelter, you should be able to list your medications so they can be sourced for you.
Man-made disasters can include many things, not just oil spills. Planning for an event means knowing more than one evacuation route and making an evacuation plan with your family in case you're not together and a sudden disaster occurs.
Knowing the dangers in your vicinity is also up to you. Know what your risks are and make a plan for each one with your family.
Bear in mind that because of the combustive nature of a petrochemical plant, terrorism is also a real threat to residents here.
Now, we could have acts of terrorism. That's a big thing these days. There are a number of areas in the country that may be considered soft targets for terrorists. For example, maybe Point Lisas. Point Lisas is pretty much well secured, but if a terrorist is determined enough, they're going to get inside. And once they get inside, it's how much damage they can do before they're stopped. You know, and it's always a big concern, and that's why security down there is so tight. There are fence line communities, as they're called, both outside Petrotrin and Marabella, and outside Point Lisas as well. And those fence line communities are being trained in what to do if something happens. Both areas have very loud siren systems, and they have tones to the sirens that give you an indication of what's happening, right? So the people are aware and they know what to do. ODPM assisted Petrotrin in the development of the Marabella fence line evacuation plan, which was carried to fruition and tested and worked extremely well.
Be ready to respond immediately to a sudden threat, which could be in the form of a gas leak or an explosion, and know your evacuation route and alternative exit route to safety.
Each family should have its own personal disaster response plan. You should have a plan that will tell you where to go. Right? You should establish a meeting point, like what they call a muster point. You have muster points for businesses. You can have a muster point for your home, right? So that if something happens, everybody knows to get to that point, because all your members not necessarily going to be at home at the time. But if everybody knows to get to that point, in the eventuality of something taking place, you know, everybody goes there, and you can establish a head count and see who's missing, if anybody's missing, or if everybody's there, and so on. And then from that point, you can decide what you have to do. It is possible that you may have to find shelter. In that case, you get in touch with the municipal corporation for your area.
The oil spill affecting Point Fortin and Siparia is proof that any emergency can happen at any time.
Communities organized and ready for any emergency are well equipped to survive and adapt after a disaster. I'm Nayad Lee.
And I'm Keithon Maurice.
Stay safe and keep good.